Hi, and welcome to my part three in building my massive gridless realistic city builder. But first, dark mode. I forget that I'm not like presenting to a bunch of bored businessmen in a well-lit fluorescent room. So some people have asked to, have darker slides, which I completely agree with. Part three, city simulation, or layers upon layers, I call it. Now, uh, how do you simulate a city? And I ask this because you have a city, but a city is surrounded by many, many different things, and here is just a handful of them. You have services, politics, zoning, food, electricity, markets, buildings, land value, water, the economy, work, raw resources, consumer goods, workers, investment, developers, supply chains, public transport, pedestrians, freight, and lastly, traffic. Now, these are all just systems upon systems to simulate a city. And in my research, and I've spent, I would actually argue, years researching this, there is no one simulation. Simulating a city, and this is something that Will Wright talked about, simulating a city isn't like a self contained singular formula, right? Like a flight simulation model is, or like my LTM traffic model. Those are singular known formulas. But so, speaking of Will Wright, the guy who made the original SimCities, something that was very influential to him, but it wasn't as big as a part as people like to talk about. But it's urban dynamics. Urban dynamics, later also known more as system dynamics. If you work in any sort of business, you probably know something about system dynamics. But Urban Dynamics was a book from the 1969, I want to say, written by J.W. Forrester, and it essentially took what a city is and turned it into, repeatable algorithms and something that is called stocks and flows. Now, stocks and flows is something, again, it's a big part of system dynamics. Most simulations will use some form of this. And I just want to talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to go through the different ways to simulate a city, and then at the end, talk about what I'm doing. So let's imagine like a bathtub, right, in the middle of the screen here, okay? You have an inflow for a city that's things like births per year, people moving in, new houses being built, new businesses, that kind of stuff. That fills this what they call stock in the stock and flow method. In our bathtub analogy, is the water. So the stock in this case would be number of people, jobs, houses, etc. And then you can't just keep filling that up. You also have to have an outflow. Outflow would be things like demolitions, deaths, businesses going out of business, that kind of stuff. The water level is the stock, and it's directly the result of the difference between the inflow and outflow. Something that's important, you can't change stock. You can only change the way things go in and out, but you should never touch stock. That's a big part of system dynamics. And it's realistic, right? Like if you live in a city and the city does a drastic, new policy or redesign, it normally won't affect the stock or the people it's already affected. It can only affect things going into the system, or it can get things out of the system faster. Forrester's model isn't about geography or about how things get to one another in a timely manner, like my traffic simulation. It's about the life cycle of the city structures and the people that go in and out of the city. Now, what was more influential towards SimCity and modern city builders is probably cellular automata. Will Wright referred to this as cellular dynamics. Cellular dynamics or cellular automata is the idea of taking data and representing it essentially as a 2D grid. An extremely famous version of this would be Conway's Game of Life. The data being represented on screen here is literally just a one or a zero, and there are rules about what happens to each cell. So I'm going to go into a little bit about cellular dynamics. I think it's quite interesting. So, using a city simulation example, imagine in the middle you have an industrial block. So, that is a building, right? A building that is making pollutant. So, let's represent the pollutant by a number. So, number 100 is the worst the pollution can get. Zero is no pollution. So let's pretend this building is making pollution. Now, what would happen is, well, the pollution obviously in real life does not just stay on the building itself, it will radiate outwards like this. And there's a very simple mathematical equation going on here. Essentially, the center, the 100 block here says, is there an empty neighbor next to me? If so, yes. Take 25 of my value and give it to the next cell. Then it happens to the next cell. Give it 25. Then it happens to the next cell until there's no more to give. That is a very simple form of cellular dynamics. Computers love doing math like this. So let's take a more detailed example. So in the middle, I have a big arterial road with little roads coming off it, a big industrial block, and a park. Again, I am going to quickly mask everything off as their value. So the industrial side, obviously 100, it's vomiting out pollution. Then we have the 50s here for the arterial road, and the small roads here only give off 25% pollution. And in the park, we actually gave a negative value to, so it actually sucks up pollution. But of course, we need to radiate out. So using our cellular automata math, everything will just radiate out. And of course, the pollution radiates out. But you can see down here, the park actually impacted the road next to it and actually took some pollution away from the road next to it. And this is how SimCity worked. So you can see here, this is just cellular dynamics again, or cellular automata. You can see the roads make the pollution and it radiates out. Obviously, in the big polluting areas, makes the most pollution. And that's how a lot of simulations worked. And the reason why cellular dynamics or cellular automata is so useful is because let's take property value as an example. Again, I'm just going to apply the same mathematics where it radiates outwards. So again, the bad factory radiates out negative property value when the park radiates out good property value. Of course, I could change these values. I've kept the values the same, but then what SimCity did, and this is more impactful to SimCity than Forrester's urban dynamics was that you can take the pollution map and the property value map, overlay them, and just apply mathematics to it vertically. And that's how it works. And you can just take the same size, this is an array essentially, and just do array, additions, subtractions, multiplications. And it's an extremely quick way to get great feeling numbers. So let's talk about SimCity's simulation a little bit more. Again, I'm building my own city simulator, but it's extremely important to understand how things were done in the past, why things were done like that, and things that they might have been doing well that we should emulate even today. So the population in SimCity is actually simulated tile by tile, and it's again a direct reflection of those layers I talked about in the cellular automata. And it fully uses cellular automata with the stocks and flow logic to, I would say, great effect. And of course, in SimCity, their population is actually fully abstracted. There is no, following individuals. They follow what is told they can and should do on the cellular automata grid. Just some fun issues with SimCity. Mainly, I just want to, again, I discovered this kind of after the fact. This is an interesting thing to remember is that, when I was playing SimCity, I never noticed this. I only noticed this after somebody told me. So, they use pathfinding for the traffic, which is normal. It's very easy to do pathfinding on a cellular grid. But after work, Sims actually just returned to their nearest vacant home, which I didn't know that happened. And also, the buses and subways apparently acted as teleports. Um, Again, which kind of makes sense because again they weren't agent based, so it kind of makes sense that they were just treated as teleports, and that's probably how people wanted to use subways and buses other than driving, was because it probably gave them a faster way to get around the city. But again, there's no, like, I'm not saying anything here is bad, it's just a part of the times. SimCity, even up to SimCity 4, had to work on something like a Pentium 3, I want to say, so so another book that is quite influential, at least to the early city builders, was Growing Artificial Societies. This was published in 1996. This is basically the one of the first books that I could research that was about agent-based simulation. So agent-based simulation has been around for a long time. It's been a thing that people have wanted for a long time. This was much more influential because it also covered stuff like spatial simulation, i.e., things are actually quite far apart. How do cities function when you've got two zones that are like far apart? And it also covers some social rules, which I can go into that later. So agent-based simulation. This is what City Skylines uses. From what I can tell, almost all the modern city builders use agent-based simulation. And as I said in my last video, this is not a bad thing. Agent-based simulation, I think, is good. It's a very fun thing. And computers get better and better, and ideally, we could have more and more agents. So here you have an agent. An agent normally will have a type. So that type could be like student if they're a low or high income worker or they're retired. Then because of that, they will have a job. Their job has a destination in the world. Their transit type this agent would like to do, and their salary. And then there's a visual element, of course, like their position in the 3D world and the 3D model they should use for an example for the city skylines example. And so an agent works, you take all these little guys, spread them out across the map, and they will be in home, work, and then during the day, they will just walk to different jobs, different points of interest, depending on what the city simulation needs of them. And again, this is a very, it leads to very emergent real behavior. So City Skylines famously uses agents. They don't fully use agents. They probably do some other simulation stuff. I believe they use agents for the pedestrians and cars and transit, but I believe there is stuff under the economy that probably works in a different way, but I don't have access to their source code. So yeah, they have simulated life paths, but there is a per agent cost here, which I kind of talked about in my last video. And again, the city skylines way of doing traffic is great because it can take things into account like the agent's own driver's behavior, their comfort, their cost. And then bad traffic can force buildings to not have enough workers, causes the dead and the trash to pile up, etc. So it leads to like a pretty nice feeling city, but sometimes the simulation doesn't feel like it meaningfully punishes or rewards choice. A lot of people in my last video left comments about feeling it was, I said I had no comments on the agent-based simulation, but a lot of people said, oh, there's loads of issues with it, yada yada yada. And I do understand that. And I think one of the issues is that the simulation sometimes doesn't feel like you're impacting it. It feels more about the agents, how they're getting to places is more important. Yeah, and as I said, the infrastructure decisions don't feel load bearing. Okay, another thing I want to quickly touch on. I'm not going to go into a full lecture here, but KD trees is something that I'm pretty sure all city simulation simulators have used. A KD tree or K-dimensional tree, it's a binary space partitioning structure. This has been used since Doom, like literally the video game Doom, binary space partitioning. And it's a very, very quick mathematical way to find out things like how many shops are within a 5 kilometer radius of me, or how many trees are there. I would recommend some other videos. Just type in KD tree into YouTube, and there's people who give really good explanations about this. But I just wanted to mention that this is something that I'm doing, and pretty much all city simulators I hope do. If they don't do it, I would question that. So I've been talking about city simulations, and you know me, I like my white papers. So I do research. Has there been any like huge discoveries in city simulations? And there are a lot of white papers coming out about city simulations, but I have to warn you, if you have a weak stomach, you should look away now. The forbidden fourth type, LLM powered agents. During my research, I have found many papers basically going the opposite direction I'm going. I'm making the argument that I want to be less agent based in my simulation. Academia seems to be in the opposite direction. They say, no, 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 we need more agents, but we also need to give each agent their own LLM, their own AI to follow. Um, I haven't read these papers fully. I've skimmed a lot of the diagrams. So this is some of the diagrams that come from two of the papers. Weirdly, these both the academic three all three academic papers have quite nice graphics. Maybe some AI was used here. I don't know. It's not really my point. But but it's the each paper kind of has their own different system. The one on the left here, this is about using LLMs to decide what transport they use, what schedule they have, and how they should maybe explore the city. The one on the right, kind of similar to that, you know, personal personas, how they socially interact with each other. The last LLM white paper was a little bit more interesting, where it wasn't the agents using an LLM to decide what to do each day, but more about larger systems. So in this paper, they said the government makes decisions on an LLM, households make decisions on an LLM, you know, how you do production and all that, and the investment. Just disclaimer, I am not going to be using anything like this. I can't think of a more cursed game mode than, oh, you can play my game and there is a token cost for how long you play my game. That's awful. But it's an interesting thing to look at. And I do like to read these things. I do like to see where academia is going. So something that's a lot more grounded in reality. Again, gravitational model. This is something, again, I believe all city builders do. We've had gravity since Isaac Newton. And the gravitational force is, well, I can explain it like this. So imagine a woman. The woman could be an agent, the woman could be a population group. It doesn't really matter. They are currently at home. They need a job. So they have a choice between, they would use a KD tree normally to find out what's nearby them or what's inside, you know, what's nearby, and she's between two different buildings. Now, it's in most city builders, it would actually be not the agent or the woman in the middle deciding where to go, even though that makes sense, right? Like the person decides where to go. It's normally a lot more computationally cheaper to have the places of employment decide who to take. So this is called a sink system. It's like a sink and a drain. The companies actually pull in people traditionally, because this is a lot cheaper than having the woman in the middle decide where she goes to work. So we have two gravitational fields, and the gravitational field decides how big it is decided on things like, well, is there occupancy at either of these jobs? Do they need people? What's the land value? What's the building rating? And that decides the size of each gravitational sink. And then the agent will get pulled towards whatever's stronger. Again, this is an extremely classic system. Most city builders, I believe, use something like this. However, an issue that I've been having or I've been trying to solve is, okay, so if this was an agent based simulation, there was also a time to destination that becomes a part of the decision making here. But there are issues sometimes where, well, let's say the occupancy of both buildings is exactly the same, the land value is the exact same, and the distance is the exact same. How, who wins? Now, in a extremely laissez-faire gravitational model, it would just be a coin flip essentially, random chance which way she goes. However, what I want to build is something a bit more intelligent than just the building itself or the zone itself deciding how big it is. What I really want to do is something like this. The place of work will reference what's around it in its immediate, we could call this a district perhaps. I want to be able to know what's around it, and then each district can actually have its own score. And I will go into that more in later, and I'll show an actual demo I have built to kind of visualize what I'm thinking about. So no one simulation works on its own, right? Simulations is layers upon layers of different systems, and they're all woven to make a single engaging experience. I have been working on documenting everything I do. I like Markdown. These are Markdown files. These are all the systems I have already pretty much fully planned out. I like to document everything as I go along. Again, I'm from like the corporate world, and I like to have everything documented. So in case something was to happen to me, I could actually deliver this to someone else and they could finish it on my stead or a team. Let's talk about my simulation. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but I wanted to just show you a sort of a kitchen sink of what I'm doing right now. And I will go into detail in some of the more interesting ones here. The first one you might have caught your eye was the Victoria 3 style, what they call cohorts, I believe. I love Victoria 2, Victoria 3. I love those kind of games. And I want statistical population groups. Right now, I'm working with the idea of POPs. So instead of just like low income, high income workers, so POPs are groups defined by their profession, culture, religion, and state of residence and workplace. And like everything, they're statistical stocks. So they have like a standard of living, wealth, and qualifications that they have. And this will allow them to migrate place to place. But another reason I really wanted to have a pop system was because I want pops to naturally congregate together. Like, in real life, we have neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods are very dictated by the local industry and some other population types I want to simulate, and I'm trying to build them in early. Tourists, I think tourists are a big part of cities, especially cities that have a lot of beautiful natural points of interest. I want to be able to simulate external commuters. So if your city does not have enough highly educated or does not have enough people who are willing to do seasonal work, they would actually come into the city to work. I also want to simulate, sort of in addition to that, would be economic migrants, people who come to your city for work, add pressure to the system that you need to be able to account for. And lastly, the homeless. I'm still working on the sort of mathematics there. I want to be very careful with it. I understand, I believe it was a SimCity, the 2013, the last SimCity. They tried to do homelessness and it was really bad. And definitely don't want to have a system like that. But I am also trying to account for that. So going back to my simulation, the last thing I want to touch on is sort of this dynamic points of interest slash districts I've been talking about, and a little bit about the demand pipeline. So let's go back to my example here. There is an agent. She is stuck between two job options. Let's say these job options, from what you see here, are identical, right? Okay, well, how does she decide where to go? Well, if we zoom out from looking at her and let you look at the city, she lives here. Now, there are two job offers for her. They are both 5 kilometers. Which one do you think she would actually go for? Do you think she would want to work on the outskirts, further away from her home? Or do you think she'd like to work inside the city? Well, statistically, most people they would most likely want to go live towards a city because closer to the city, salaries are higher, there are more opportunities. That is a fact of most cities. So she would probably want to go live towards a city. This is something I want to try and simulate better, and I don't believe many city simulators do this. So the agent in that case, or the pop, has a need to go to have some social mobility. But I also want to talk about the needs of the city, what is called RCI, or RCI traditionally. That is residential, commercial, industrial, and later it was added to office. We call it RECO. So this signals to a city its demand for new zoning, right? I think if you've played a city simulator, you know about this. You have the residential, the commercial, the industrial, and the office. Why do they all start with residential? This is something I notice in all city builders. When you go to a new city builder, the residential is the first need. I have a different mentality. I think the C and the I should be first. People will actually move towards companies and for business traditionally. We're not simulating the wild, wild west where people went out into the west with nothing to build their own house and then to build a town around it. In the modern world, it's more about people move for the job traditionally. And I believe that RECO, citywide RECO or residential commercial needs are very restricting. And I believe that's why most city builders, you build a city. You don't build many cities on the same map. Imagine this is my city builder. This is just like a picture, right? But just imagine this is my city builder. And you would have the RECO in the corner, right? Your residential, commercial, and all that need. My idea is first, my city would actually be broken up into districts, and I will demo how that's going to work soon. But let's just say the city automatically gets broken up into districts. Well, each district actually should have its own RICO in it. It should have its own need for residential, commercial, industrial, and office. This doesn't mean the districts don't talk to each other and reference each other. I want district level of requirements. And this would also lead to things like districts having their own schools, having their own hospitals, having their own police departments, and having their own access to public transit. This is something that I really want each district to be aware of, and I want pops to be able to move to districts depending on the job offering, the schooling, which is a very realistic thing. People do move to get to better schooling districts if they can afford it. So let's talk about district grouping. So again, instead of citywide RICO, I would like to have per district needs. This will allow for neighborhoods to form around industry. So if you have a huge lumber yard or something out in the city limits, the neighborhood around it would actually be built towards that, and it would actually feel like a logging town more than just another urban center. Okay, so here is a city simulation sort of sandbox. I actually built this before even building my parceling engine, so it's older than that. Nothing here is really to show any individual city simulation. This is more to show my grouping of districts idea. So I'm going to use an auto parceling tool here. Let's work on the middle first. Let's just have a little residential area in the middle here. Just boom, 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 boom. And right in the center, let's have some mixed use, residential, commercial, and let's do a little bit more residential up here, okay? And then down here, let's just have some pure commercial blocks. And on the right here, let's just have a big industrial park. On the bottom of that, let's just have some utilities and services like a water treatment plant and I don't know, a waste facility. Normally, you wouldn't put them so close to each other, obviously. Let's extend the residential a little bit there. And then on the far end, let's have a big farm area like that. Oh, it's not connected to the road. Let me just draw a road to make sure it's connected. There you go, it's connected now. Okay, now when I press start, you might have seen these little these little circles have actually centered in. These have automatically dictated what is a district and has automatic grouped districts together. So you see here, this is a residential district. Even though I put some commercial in there, it identified that this should be still a residential district with some commercial in there. And the commercial area down here, again, that has all grouped together. So this is sort of my idea for grouping together parcels of land into districts. And this was an idea I've had to simplify some of the mathematics involved. I have some maths going here. The idea, this was also simulate, could you be food self-sufficient? How much do you need to be food self-sufficient? How much waste is being managed? A lot of this is broken. Again, a lot of this is very old code. That's why it looks so ugly. But this is sort of the idea I had was that districts would automatically group, and then we could make better statistical analyses based on the district. And of course, then, because these are one district, they would understand what they have immediate access to, and the looks of the building and the feeling of the town could actually be dictated by that. And that was the districts. With movement, as you know, I've already shown off the traffic system in my previous devlog. I would be using my LTM and DTS, which is dynamic traffic system, to move between the different districts and points of interest using the realistic traffic that I demoed in my previous devlog. There would still be a demand pipeline using a gravity model. And I am also building a demand driven cargo system where industries can ship between each other and there is a downstream demand for things. And something I'm trying not to forget is to make the game fun. So I've also going to put some more fun stuff in, but I know it's been quite dry with the city simulation stuff. However, I do believe that it's important to have a solid foundation first, and make something that would make, real serious city simulator fans happy. But we can always make it more fun. And I do have kids. I have one kid who's actually old enough to start playing city simulators soon. And I would like to build a game that he would like to play as much as, his dad wants to play. Some questions I had in my previous video was sort of around what year would the game be set, what to simulate. So the year is going to be, I guess, current year. My idea was you can start with a blank canvas or build off an existing functional old town. And I'm going to demo that in this video as well quickly. Um, Another idea I had is you can help a failing town to modernize, and you would move into the future. I'm not sure if I'm going to log what year you're in. An issue I have with most city builders is that they kind of start at like the current year, I guess. But the longer you play it, you have games that go on for like 150 years, and I don't know, it feels kind of weird. So I'm not exactly sure how to get around that yet. But I do not want to simulate the far future, although I do have futuristic ideas. Like I would like to simulate drone delivery, perhaps, and autonomous cars. But again, this is sort of just pie in the sky. So let me demo where I am right now with the city builder. Okay, so here's my little city builder. I've made the map flat right now. Ignore the debug square. Um, so some things I wanted to show you, some additions that have been made. First things first, uh, people said that they would love to be able to have cities that don't require actual cars, or at least a city center that doesn't require cars. So I took some time actually making my pathing system on, I would say, on par with the cars with the traffic system. So now I'm just going to build, kind of like an old town, I guess, here, and I'm going to put some residential in the middle. There we go. Again, massive buildings. Please ignore them. They're just there for visualization. There we go. And I've put in a little residential section and a commercial street. And you can see here, none of these are cars. It's probably not very obvious to you. These are actually supposed to be bicycles. The blue are bicycles, and these are people. And as you can see, they are walking between the town, the town here and the city, all via paths. There are no cars here whatsoever. So that was what I meant by I said perhaps we could have an old town here. Imagine old small buildings here, and this is the town you inherit, but you have to build out and make the town, modern and profitable and all that kind of stuff. Now I am going to need a real road for this next part on a demo, so I'm going to build a road out here. Now let's just pretend out here there was a huge mining operation. So let's build a very large parcel of land here, and let's pretend that this is all built off some sort of, I don't know, ore deposit here or whatever. So what this is a mining operation, and what happens is, what I want to happen is, if you want to parcel off a large part of land for mining, you can do that, but it's going to come at a cost. The mining operations I want, and this would be true for like oil digging and all anything else that would require earth moving, you would actually have to, the land would actually be dug up in a quarry style, and then later you're going to have to deal with the consequence of this. And that's something that real cities have to think about. Just because your city is built on top of a huge ore deposit, do you want to dig it up? Because you'll make a lot of money, there'll be a lot of influx of people coming in, but eventually you're going to be left with a big hole in the ground, and you got to decide how to deal with that. Okay. So, those are just some of the things I've been working on. I've been working on some other things as well, like automatic barriers forming against roads when they're against cliffs, but that needs a little bit more time in the oven. Again, I've been working quite seriously on the fundamentals, on the simulation, on all the mature big boy stuff. So I decided to build this just for a little bit of fun. Probably not a good use of my time, but it was fun and it made my kids laugh. So that was important for me. So, some other things I'm doing. Again, these are like just some bullet points. I will go into these in other videos, but I want to just talk about it now, kind of get people excited, give you and give you a look behind the curtain. And here are some techie stuff that I also want to cover. Not right now, but I'll cover these later. Like my on-demand matrix, the difference between Dijkstra's at single source versus an A-star algorithm. More about top K or KD trees. My time slice demand pass, how demand goes between different areas of the game, and the GPU boundary stuff I've been doing, and obviously talk about the game engine, which again I'll cover in another video. Okay, so thank you for waiting to the end of the video and some announcements. A lot of people asked for it, and I have decided to finally make a Discord. So I have a Discord. Feel free to join. The Discord is called James's City Builder because it actually took me a while to make the Discord because I kept looking at that. What you gonna call the Discord server? And I was like, well, my game doesn't have a name yet. Join the Discord, and how about you suggest some game names for me? That'd be great. I have a like sort of like a suggestions feedback section and a general chat, and I will be developing the Discord as time goes on. Something else I decided to make. I've actually made a Patreon. I wasn't planning on making a Patreon. However, my last two videos, I've had lots of people leave comments saying, "Where's the Patreon? I want a Patreon," and all that. So I decided to make a Patreon. Right now, I only have one tier. I don't feel like I have a lot to offer, so I just made one tier for people who want to support me. And again, thank you so much for all the support to people. Some people found my Ko-fi, and I want to say thank you to those people as well for donating to me on Ko-fi. It's really nice. And um, if you want to donate on Patreon, obviously that'll be thank you so much. But don't feel like you have to donate. I'm not like pausing the project if I don't get enough Patreons and nothing like that. The Patreon will not impact this project, but it would be nice to have some initial capital to help me along the way. And again, thank you for anyone who leaves a comment, views the video, subscribes, obviously leaves any money through Ko-fi Patreon. Thank you so much. The end. The next video I'm going to talk about is
developers, 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 developers. Developers, 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 developers.
And zoning.